Hey, everybody, and welcome to True Crime Paranormal with the Psychic Sisters. This is Katie Weaver, and I am here with my co host and my sister and partner in crime, Kristi Brower. Hello.
Hello. Hey, everybody. Excited to be here for
Yeah.
another, I don't know, terrifying, interesting, fun, cool case.
Oh, this is quite the case.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it
we
is.
love it. It is definitely an unsolved case, and we're excited to bring it to you guys. So, yeah, this is going to be, well, I think super good. You guys, I guess, can be the judge of that.
Yeah.
This story starts in 1945 in New York City, on June 10th. And on this day, two little boys were riding their bikes, and a lady stopped them and asked them if they liked candy. And
Uh-oh.
they said they did, because what little boys don't like candy? So one little boy went with her. His name was Gerald Martin, or Jerry Martin, as his family called him. And he went with her. His brother stayed with the bikes. So, and his name was Tom. So Tom stayed with the bikes so that they would be safe. And Jerry went off with the lady to get the candy. And as you can imagine, never came back.
Yeah.
So within, a very short amount of time, there was a manhunt, a 9-state manhunt search for this child. The lady he was with was described, they called her Nancy. I don't know if that's because she described her, or that's how she introduced herself to the boys, but they called her Nancy. They said she was around 33 years old and she was wearing slacks. That's about all they knew.
Mm.
And
So much.
no one ever saw Gerald again. He was a little brown-eyed, fair-haired, brown-eyed, fair-haired kid that was just riding bikes with his brother, 5 p.m. on Friday. And again, he just vanished
Mm.
after that. And they looked and looked and looked for a long time. There was 5 children in the family. He was kind of right in the middle. There was a baby and there was an 11-year-old and then some little boys here in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
But they looked for Gerald for a long time and never found him. He just vanished. So fast forward a little further down the road. Remember, this happened in 1945. So we're going to fast forward now to 2017.
Whew, that is a big fast forward.
Yeah, we're going to take a big jump. And a woman named Audrey Bell. Audrey Bell's 51, and she was the mother of triplets. She lived on Long Island, so not far away. And she has triplets. She wanted to know which one was the fraternal triplet. So there were 2 that were identical twins, one that was fraternal, and she was trying to figure out for sure which was the fraternal sibling. They must all have looked a whole lot alike. But at any rate, she did a 23andMe kit on this child to try to get a sense of, who was the fraternal twin. And when the test came back, there was something kind of weird about it because she was raised in a family of Italians, or so she thought. Her father's name was Richard Palmadesso, and he was all very proud of his Italian ancestry. So she was very surprised when her children's DNA came back with no Italian heritage.
Yeah.
She thought that was really weird. And so her family was confused by this. Her dad was confused, her mom, they all were a little confused about why that would be, because that was not supposed to be the case. So she was a twin as well. So this is kind of wild. It's off topic, but so we're talking about Audrey, who was a twin. Her twin sister's name is Cynthia. And she also had triplets. So anyway, multiples runs in that family. But anyway,
But which family is it?
Right. So her sister, the twin, she decided that she also wanted to do a 23andMe test in 2019. So she did a 23andMe test as well. And again, no Italian heritage. And they were so confused because how could that be? They were supposed to be rich with Italian heritage. And according to their genetics, they didn't have that. And that was supposed to be their father's heritage. So that's just really weird. Well, unfortunately, he died in 2017. So
Yeah.
not too long after that first DNA test came back from one of his granddaughters, he died. So they couldn't even ask him and didn't know what to do. So their dad didn't have a whole lot of family. He had very little family that he was close to in any way, but he had a cousin. He was their one of the only known living relatives that he had that this family knew. His name was also Richard Palmadesso. So they went and talked to Richard and they asked him if he would take a DNA test to try to help them figure out what was going on. Because at this point, of course, they're not sure.
Yeah.
Like, who's our dad? Or
Yeah.
or what's going on? Like, how is this happening? Right. Well, he agrees and he takes a test, and the test confirms that he is not their relative.
Yeah.
So
That's so bizarre.
yes. So now this supposed cousin of their dad's is not their dad's cousin. So now what? So now they're especially confused
Yeah.
because these these people that are all supposed to be related are not. They're supposed to be Italian. They're not. Nothing really works. But Cynthia, the twin sister, when she had her test, she had opted for the selection in 23andMe that shows you who your relatives are that have all also done a 23andMe test, right?
Yeah.
And so there was a man that had come up named Tom Martin who was looked like a fairly close relative. And they didn't know who Tom Martin was, but remember their dad, Richard, wasn't close to his family, so they just thought he was another relative, right?
Right.
So they reach out to Tom Martin. Does the name Tom sound familiar to you guys yet?
Mhm. Yeah.
So they contact this man. The twin sisters, they shared 22% of their DNA with him, which meant he could be their grandfather or their uncle. Well, guess what? He was their uncle.
Yeah.
They contacted him. He was 79 years old, retired in Florida, and had his DNA test done because when he was a child, he was 6 years old and he was out riding bikes with his little brother, who was almost 4. And he was in charge. And a lady came and offered them candy. And his little brother, Jerry, went with the lady and he stayed with the bikes, and Jerry never came back.
Yeah.
Yeah, their dad definitely was
Jerry.
Jerry.
Yeah.
So then, of course, their family is now he's gone. They can't test him, but their DNA is, telling a pretty convincing story. Then
Yeah.
Tom sends them a picture of himself, and I'll show it to you guys here. They look nearly identical.
Yeah.
They look crazy similar. And
Oh,
they're
they do.
so amazed. But again, there's really nobody to ask because his mother died when he was 12. And when she died, he was sent away to live with an uncle. And that he just didn't have a strong connection to his family. And so that's the thing that you have to know here. Like, there just wasn't much to go on there, if that makes any sense.
Mhm.
So once they get to know him, they get to meet him, they discover they have all kinds of funny similarities. They both love coconut cake. They both loved movies and loved acting. And in fact, Uncle Tom had even had some headshots done when he was younger and wanted to be an actor. And apparently, their dad, Richard, or Jerry, if you will, was way into movies and film and acting, and also had a penchant for coconut cake. Isn't that wild?
Yeah.
So, according to his birth certificate, he was born in Staten Island on May 31st, 1943. Now, isn't that interesting? Because he was 3.5 when he was kidnapped
Yeah.
in 1945.
Yeah.
And so they were trying to pass him off as a 2-year-old when he was,
Mhm.
in fact, a 3.5-year-old.
Yeah.
So, one interesting thing about this is that that man was about 18 months older than he thought he was his whole life.
Yeah, what a weird thing.
Mhm. So, according to the birth certificate, he was born on Staten Island May 31st, 1943, to Isabel and Angelo Palmadesso. They did not have any children of their own. Isabel was in her 40s, and she did have two daughters that were in their 20s from a previous relationship. But the two of these two people had no children together.
Yeah.
So again, when Richard was 12, Isabel died, and he was sent to live with his uncle Jack. And he stayed with that family until he graduated from high school. But after that, kind of went on his own in the world and hardly kept in contact with any family members. And then when he was 27, his dad died. So there just wasn't a ton of contact to family in general.
Mhm.
So we do know that Angelo served in World War II for a couple of years and arrived back home to Staten Island in September 1945.
Yeah.
So they're the same year, right? Because this little guy was kidnapped on June 10th, 1945. Dad got home, or Angelo got home from World War II in September of 1945. And so it appears as though he went to war childless and came home to a child. And so there's speculation there that maybe when he went to war, he thought that she was pregnant, or maybe she was and she miscarried. We're not
Yeah.
sure if this was, or well, they're not sure if this was if she kidnapped this little boy, or if someone else did and she bought or adopted him from them in kind of a, backroom adoption. Nobody really knows for sure. We do know that they, passed him off as a 2-year-old, even though he was actually 3.5,
Yeah.
which is pretty, pretty wild. You must not know children very well to think that a 2-year-old is actually, or a 3.5-year-old is actually a 2-year-old.
Yeah,
But if
they're
you
much
really
different.
don't, yeah. But if you really don't know kids, maybe you wouldn't really know that. But
Yeah.
at any rate, we don't really know about it. Um, Family members did report that Isabel wasn't a very nice mom, that she was really hard on Richard and he was in trouble all the time. And I mean, obviously, their dad wasn't much of a dad because as soon as mom died, he got rid of this kid. So he seemed a little unwanted, interestingly, sadly, considering that he was stolen from the people who did want him. But at any rate, that's what we know. That's what we know right there.
Mm.
So it's quite the story. It's a hell of a deal. The daughters have stayed really close to their Uncle Tom and continue to have a relationship with him and his wife. They didn't have any kids. And so to discover they have these nieces out here and their children and families, and
Yeah.
they're becoming a
Very cool.
family, and I just think that's really, really special. And in losing my own dad, I can say that finding this really special uncle that looks like your dad and is a lot like your dad and is your dad's brother, I can only imagine what a wonderful blessing this is for these girls once they got over the
Yeah.
shock of, discovering that their poor dad was a kidnapped kid.
Yeah. Yeah.
It definitely, Tom had said in an interview that it definitely brought him some peace knowing that his brother was loved and had a good life and had, a loving wife and kids, and, that he was
Yeah.
okay. He also said that his dad was convinced that he was alive, that the dad of of Jerry was convinced that he was alive and that he was out there somewhere and that they just needed to find him, but just never did.
Mhm. Never
Yeah.
could.
So, with all of that being said, what do we think about how Jerry ended up Richard and how this happened?
I do feel like, that Isabel adopted him. I don't feel like she stole him. I feel like someone else did and then, provided her with the fake birth certificate and a bunch of that stuff. I don't get the impression from her that she had the gumption to go steal a child on her own. I do feel she'd been lying to her husband and the war was ending and he was coming home and, "Oh, shit, now what am I gonna do?" There was a lot of, her identity built around being able to have children
Mhm.
and being able to provide children for him. So I do feel like she adopted him from some backroom, not cool adoption kinda situation and passed him off to her husband as their own child.
There was a kidnapper at the time, a woman who was known as the nanny, who had a ring of kidnapping and then adopting kids out going on. And so
Yeah.
they really wondered if it was the nanny. The descriptions that they got of this woman, they had some very loose, like, witnesses, and the descriptions they had made them think maybe it was the nanny. And
Mhm.
so what you're saying really, Christy, aligns with that, that, perhaps it was the one of the kidnapping. Apparently, this was a little more common back when there was less easy surveillance, back when it was much easier to forge a thing like a birth certificate.
Yeah.
I mean, even 20 years before that, a lot of people didn't even have a birth certificate, you know? I mean,
Right.
standardized records like we have now just weren't a thing, and so now it would be a much bigger deal to come up with a birth certificate, though it happens all the time, but,
Mhm.
it back then, it really wasn't that big of a deal to come up with a birth certificate.
Right. Right. Wow. One of the things that I saw in this story that was interesting is that the daughters did say that the dad, Jerry or Richard, struggled with, anxiety and that he was bipolar and that he really did have some issues with his mental health, and I imagine that he did. I
Mhm.
Can you imagine? At 3 and a half, a child knows who they are. They
Yeah.
know who their family is.
Mhm.
That took some serious brainwashing to convince this kid that they weren't who they said that they weren't who they thought they were, that the people that
Mhm.
were taking care of them were not their parents, and these were their parents, and you remember kids at that age, how attached they are to how old they are.
Yeah.
And to tell a child who's 3, almost 4 that, "No, now you're 2," I can't imagine that he really liked that so well.
Mhm. Well, and I'm your mom,
And
and
I'm
this
your
is
mom.
your dad. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and, he was young enough that you could make those changes with a lot of repetition, but I
Mhm.
imagine he lived his whole life with conflict. Like, there was a part of him that
Mhm.
knew something isn't right here, he didn't know
Mhm.
what, but I bet he had at that age, kids have more of a physical experience of emotions as memory
Mhm.
rather than actual, like, visual memory,
Yeah.
and so he could probably feel it, but not identify it.
Yeah.
But I would imagine all his life, and it's probably why he wasn't close to his family, because there was a part of him that
Right.
knew they weren't even his family to begin
They
with.
weren't even his family. Yeah. Yeah. Isn't that wild? It's
It's so
really
wild,
a hell of a case. Yeah.
and it's so frustrating to find all of this out after everyone who could have
Oh,
been asked is dead,
yeah.
because how many people in that family knew where that kid came from? Suddenly she shows up with this child, you
I'm
know?
guessing they didn't. I would imagine that while he was gone to war, she probably wasn't close to his family. They probably didn't have much of a connection. I feel like her family wasn't around either. And so nobody really knew.
Nobody noticed.
I mean, there's certainly no
Suddenly there's
Facebook,
this
it's not like there's, people broadcasting their lives at all, and I'm
right.
guessing that nobody knew her. The marriage feels so unhappy. I
Yeah.
feel like the marriage between Isabel and Angelo was very unhappy anyway,
Well, yeah,
and
just trying to get this kid was a part of, I think, her trying to save that marriage,
Mhm,
knowing that she had been lying to him this whole time. He thinks he's coming home to his own son, and
mhm.
then there is no kid.
Yeah, yeah, there's definitely was some big dysfunction there in that marriage, but yeah, it's quite the case. It does bring me a lot of joy for those sisters that they get to
Yes.
have this uncle in their lives. I think there's some real magic and joy in that. And also, for Tom to get some closure, because even at 6 years old, his brother disappeared on his watch, and it wasn't
Right?
his fault. He was 6 years old. But still, he had to have had some trauma from that happening,
Oh,
you
yeah,
know?
for sure. That certainly had to have impacted him, and he was, you
Yeah.
know enough older that he would have a lot more memory of that experience than little Jerry would have.
Yeah, most definitely. Most definitely. So,
Mm.
well, so that's where it's at. Pretty
I'm
interesting.
23andMe, man. That DNA stuff is just answering questions right and left, even questions we didn't even know we had. It's very
Right?
interesting.
No kidding. No kidding. Yep. Oh, I just expect we'll see more and more of this kind of stuff. It's
Oh,
pretty
we will.
yeah.
The technology just keeps getting better and better,
Yeah.
and the connecting with people, that you're related to, that's so interesting
Yeah.
because people find we had a cousin find us that way,
Yeah.
who had been disconnected from her family, not a close cousin, but,
Mhm.
because you had done wasn't it you and Kara both did it
Uh-huh.
with DNA
Yeah.
and
I'm connected with a very fun cousin in Florida. Yeah, it's
yeah,
pretty
it's
cool.
cool.
Yeah, it
Yeah, it's
is. Yep.
hmm.
Well, and in this case, it solved a 70-plus-year-old kidnapping.
Yeah, it surely
Kind
did.
of. Kind of. I mean, it found
Mhm.
him. I mean,
Yeah,
there'll never be any
at
true
least
closure
found
as to what happened to him, but yeah.
yeah, but at
Oh,
least
there it is.
the family has left knows now.
Yeah. Yeah. Alrighty. Well, just a reminder, you can find new cases coming out from us a few times a week now. You might have noticed we've changed our format a little bit. We're shortening our episodes and putting out more content. So we're
Yeah,
hoping that you guys
5
like
shows.
that. Yes, and then 2 live shows a week as well. So 5 shows weekly.
Yeah, 5 total,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. So we'll see how it goes. We're this is our first week. We were doing much longer shows and we decided to shorten them, do more content and see how that goes. Definitely open for your feedback,
for sure.
but we always want to hear what you guys have to say. If ever you have a case that you want us to look into, throw it our way. It might not be instant, but it'll definitely go on our list and we'll
For
remember
sure.
it or get to it at least at some point. But as always, you can find us on Facebook and on YouTube, True Crime Paranormal. We have a Patreon, which is True Crime Paranormal. We appreciate your support there if you want extra content. And of course, we have a TikTok. So come
Yes,
find our
we do.
TikTok. We do
And
little short synopsises.
we
And
now
we
have a
have a
Reddit.
Reddit.
We're
Yeah.
also just started on Reddit. We're gonna get going on Reddit. There's so much true crime stuff on Reddit. If that's the place you're interested, come find us. We're True Crime Paranormal over there as well.
Yeah, we'll keep working that angle also. So we're just true criming it up over here,
We sure are.
kind of.
Well, we're not committing them. We just talk about
Yeah.
them.
We're just watching for them. That's all.
Yeah.
All right, you guys. Well, have a great day and thanks so much for being here. You have been watching or listening to True Crime Paranormal with the Psychic Sisters. Have a great day.
Bye, guys.
Thanks.